The tablet arced through the night air like a slow-falling star. My nephew's giggle rang out behind it as it spun toward the roaring bonfire. My daughter Muriel's sketchbook files, 4 months of concept art for her animation school portfolio, flickered through my mind in that same instant. The dull clatter as it landed in the embers sent a jolt straight through my chest. "Maybe now she'll stop acting so special," my brother Desmond announced, raising his beer can in a mock salute. My parents laughed from their lawn chairs, the flames throwing amber light across their pleased expressions. Muriel's fingers dug into my palm so tightly I felt my knuckles grind. Her breath came in tiny, silent hitches as we watched her future dissolve into smoke. The casing melted, bubbled, and turned to char. My family braced for the meltdown, the tears, the drama they'd clearly been hoping to stage. Instead, I laughed softly. The mocking stopped cold. "My name is Renata. I'm 43 and an ICU nurse. This is how I finally closed a wound my family had kept open for 2 decades. Being raised alongside Desmond meant existing in his glow. He was 4 years older, naturally charming, and the unquestioned favorite of our parents. When we were kids sharing a room, he'd mark an invisible boundary down the middle, always claiming more space for himself. Whenever I accomplished something, he had a way of shrinking it. "Bet they just felt bad for you," he'd murmur. After I earned honors in school, I learned to absorb the little jabs, the backhanded remarks about my apartment, cozy about my career, sweet that you settled for something safe. About my husband, sturdy fellow like an old truck. Theo and I had been apart for 1.5 years, but I never corrected anyone's assumptions. Why hand them more ammunition? But Muriel was different. My daughter inherited her father's creative eye and my discipline. At 16, she'd already licensed 2 character designs to indie studios. That tablet wasn't a treat. It was her launchpad, bought with 5 months of double shifts, tight budgets, and skipped dinners. The family reunion at my parents' cabin was meant to celebrate Muriel getting into her dream program early. Instead, while the adults sipped drinks on the porch, Desmond's kids had pulled the tablet from her bag. One approving glance from their father was all the permission they needed to hurl it into the flames. Now across the fire, my grin only widened as the quiet dragged on. My mother cleared her throat. My father's beer paused halfway to his lips. "What's so funny, Renata?" Desmond finally snapped, his tone clipped. "Just thinking about what comes next," I said, my voice steady, the same tone I used to deliver hard news to patients. "Oh, relax," my mother scoffed. "Kids will be kids. You baby that girl anyway." I faced her, calm and precise. "And what exactly did I spoil her with, Mom?" "The overtime I pulled while Dad complained about his golf dues, the dinners I skipped while you flew Desmond's family to Cancun," my brother scoffed. "Here comes the sob story. It's just a gadget, Renata, move on." I nodded slowly. "You're right, it's just a gadget." I stood and took Muriel's hand. "We're done here." But first, I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and tapped transfer. "What are you doing?" my father asked, his voice suddenly tight. "Clearing the rest of your medical debt," I said. "I've been covering it for 4 years. Consider it settled, effective tonight." My mother's face went white, but I added softly, "We can't afford consequences." "Also, Desmond, I've told the district I'm stepping down from running the scholarship drive that's been covering the twins' tuition assistance." I looked at his children, their smugness suddenly gone. Maybe they'll learn to earn it. Desmond's beer can crumpled in his fist. "You can't do that." "I already did," I said, helping Muriel gather her things. "Oh, and Dad, that country club membership that quietly renews every spring, I canceled the payment." His jaw tightened. "Consider tonight the end of the family charity fund," I said, walking Muriel to the car. "You've all been coasting on what I give while treating me like an afterthought. That's over now." The ride home was quiet until Muriel whispered, "They're going to hate us." "They already did," I answered. "Now they just have to do it without my money." Back at our small rental across town, I told her everything. How for years I'd quietly held the family's finances together, ever since my father's shop went under 6 years earlier. How I'd chaired the scholarship drive specifically to help Desmond's twins. How I managed accounts none of them knew existed. The fallout came in slow, silent waves over the following month. No confrontations, just the gradual collapse of the safety nets I'd been holding up. Desmond's twins were pulled from class when the school flagged their unpaid tuition. My brother's calls went straight to voicemail. A friend who still worked in the front office told me the twins had finally been made to sit with real consequences. My parents scrambled to refinance when their loan came due in full. The cabin, whose taxes I'd quietly covered for years, got a delinquency notice. I only knew because my father left a panicked message about a letter from the county. They cornered me in the hospital parking garage 3 weeks later. Desmond's eyes were red-rimmed. My father braced himself on his cane. My mother stood rigid, arms folded, gray roots showing for the first time in memory. "You've torn this family apart," Desmond spat. I unlocked my car without flinching. "No, I just stopped letting you tear me apart. We're underwater on everything," my father said. "The bank's calling about the cabin." "I covered that mortgage for 6 years," I reminded him. "The 6 years you told everyone it was a rental property." "We're blood," my mother insisted. "You don't do this to blood." I looked at them, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. "That's exactly the point. You don't do what you did to blood. You don't burn your niece's dream for a laugh. You don't belittle your daughter's wins. You don't take and take and take and never once say thank you." Desmond stepped closer, anger giving way to panic. "What do you want? An apology?" "Fine, sorry about the stupid tablet." "I don't want anything from you," I said, and the relief of it washed over me like cold water. "That's the whole point. I'm done." I drove off, leaving them standing there, suddenly forced to face each other without me as their shared target, their emotional outlet, their financial cushion. 2 days after the parking garage, I took Muriel to buy a new tablet, sleeker, faster, loaded with professional design software. As she unboxed it in her room, I spotted something on her desk, a small, warped, blackened chunk of plastic. "What's that?" I asked, turning it over in my hand. "Part of the old one. I dug it out of the fire pit the next morning," she said. "I'm keeping it." "As a reminder of what they did?" I asked, throat tightening. She shook her head. "As a reminder of what you did, how you stood up for us." She met my eyes, steady and sure. "I'm never going to let anyone treat me the way they treated you." Watching her fingers move confidently across the new keyboard, I understood then that the real payback wasn't cutting them off. It was cutting myself loose. Whatever pattern had gripped this family stopped with me. It would never reach my daughter. Months later, word reached me that my parents had sold the cabin to cover their debts. They tried calling a few times, but I kept my distance, focused instead on Muriel's college essays. Half a year after that night, Desmond showed up at my door unannounced. He looked worn, thinner, dressed cheaper than I'd ever seen him, wearing a humility that was new. "The twins are on academic probation," he said, skipping hello. "The school says they need help or they're out. I can't afford tutoring and I know Muriel's good at—" "No," I said simply. He blinked. "You haven't even heard. I don't need to, it's no." I kept my hand on the door. "Figure it out, Desmond." That's what I always had to do. He studied me, and for a second something like respect crossed his face. Then it hardened back into contempt. "You're different now." I smiled, the same smile from the fire pit that night. "Yes, that's the whole point." I shut the door gently, turned the lock, and returned to the kitchen where Muriel sat over her applications. She looked up. "Was it worth it?" I rested a hand on her shoulder. "Yes, because justice doesn't have to be loud." I glanced at the small blackened fragment she kept on her desk like a charm. Sometimes it just smiles. My parents never came back after that. I heard they eventually moved to a smaller place out of state, their finances finally matching the truth they'd spent years hiding. As for me and Muriel, we kept moving forward, our ties to the rest of the family cut for good, but so much lighter for it. "Sir, we've tried," she said, her voice unsteady. "Every number is blocked." "Then use mine," he said. "And if that fails, have legal reach his office directly. Tell him he has 45 minutes to walk through that door, or his company's credit line freezes by morning, and Child Protective Services will be waiting at his front door with a warrant for criminal abandonment." Within minutes, the hospital administration shifted into motion. My father's phone, silent all night, began ringing without stop. Odessa insisted it was an empty threat, but the panic in the administrator's voice convinced my father otherwise, and terrified of what a scandal could do to his business, he turned the car around. They came back furious, unaware of who was waiting for them. The door banged open, my father marching in first, face red with anger, Odessa close behind, her heels striking the floor sharply. "What is going on here?" he demanded, not even looking at me. "We made our position clear. She isn't our responsibility anymore." Odessa crossed her arms. "We can't have a thief disrupting our home. We came back to sign whatever forms are needed to hand her over to the state, and then we're finished with this." Neither of them had noticed the man sitting quietly in the corner shadow of the room, until he rose and stepped fully into the light. My father's face went white in an instant. "Mr. Castlane," he stammered, taking an involuntary step backward. "So you do recognize the man financing your company's entire expansion," Augustin said evenly. "I've been learning a great deal tonight about your definition of family." Odessa tried to regain control of the situation. "You don't understand what happened. That girl stole a family heirloom from our home. We had every right to protect ourselves." "I understand it perfectly," Augustin said. "While the two of you were driving back here, my security team pulled the transaction records from the exchange downtown. That bracelet wasn't stolen by Ren at all. It was sold by you, Odessa, 3 days ago to cover a personal debt you've been hiding from your husband." He held out a tablet, and my father stared at the screen, at the clear footage of his wife exchanging my mother's bracelet for a stack of cash, and something in his expression cracked open completely. Before Odessa could say another word, Augustin stepped closer, his voice cutting through the room like something physical. "You have 2 choices right now. 1, I call the police immediately. You're both arrested tonight for theft, fraud, and criminal abandonment of a minor. Your credit line is frozen by morning, and your company collapses within the week. 2, you sign this." He nodded toward the lawyer who had appeared silently beside him, already holding a folder open on the table. "A full, permanent transfer of custody to a guardianship managed through my foundation. You walk out of her life tonight, and you never come back into it. Decide now." My father looked down at the papers, then at Odessa, then finally at me. Whatever fight had been left in him disappeared completely. With shaking hands, he took the pen and signed, ending his role in my life for good. The door shut behind them for the final time, and this time, the silence it left behind didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in hours. Augustin turned to me, and every trace of coldness had melted from his face. "Your new life starts today, Ren," he said, and he meant every word of it. Through his foundation, he became my guardian in every way that actually mattered, making sure I had a stable home, a proper education, and the kind of steady support I had gone without for so long. He taught me, patiently and without ever rushing me, that family isn't defined by blood or by the last name on your birth certificate, but by the people who choose to stand beside you when everything else has fallen apart. Now, 13 years later, I am 27, and I run the very foundation that once took me in when no one else would. I spend my days helping other young people rebuild after their own families have failed them, and there is nothing I find more meaningful. As for my father and Odessa, their story went in a very different direction. Without Augustin's financial backing, my father's company collapsed into bankruptcy within a year. Odessa left the moment the money disappeared with her. The last I heard, my father was working a low-paying job somewhere, living alone in a small apartment, carrying the full weight of every choice he made on that one Tuesday afternoon. But their ending isn't really my story anymore. Mine is about everything that got built after the ruins, about proof that the worst night of your life doesn't have to be the last word on how it turns out.